Welcome in, wrestling fans. It's a Tuesday evening here on the PA Power Hour. Eric and I are going to be joined by a special guest, Ryan Crookham, here in a little bit. Eric, I had a funny question for you. Did you have power hours back when you were in college, or was that something that I know you've been in college for a while, but...
Yeah, I actually never really did the power hour thing until after I got out of college. I think I only ever did it once. And
Right.
As an 18-pounder, I would not have lasted long in a power hour competition.
Not at all. Not at all. And that was just kind of funny. When we talk about Ryan Crookham, right, he's going to Lehigh. Probably, and someone tweeted us out, I didn't see it, who it was, tweeted out that he's one of the biggest recruits, or if not the biggest recruit for Lehigh, at least in the last 20 years. Lehigh's had some pretty big names come through in the last 10 years. Darian Cruz, Mason Beckman, Nathaniel Brown, Jordan Cutler, a lot of big name guys, but Ryan's probably one of the biggest ones. Would you agree, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan, he's only got 2 years of varsity under his belt, but a couple state titles already. Obviously made his mark on it whenever he won the Super 32 as an eighth grader. So, he's a guy that we've been watching for years, and excited to have him stay home in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Eric. And without further ado, let's bring on Ryan Crookham here. Ryan, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Very good, Ryan. And I know you're sporting the Lehigh shirt on. I know you just had a little bit of a workout here. Just first of all, congratulations. Talk about how it feels to have that commitment, off your chest, and kind of really, broadcasting to the world that, hey, I'm gonna go to Lehigh.
Yeah, I'm really excited. It was an easy decision for me. Lehigh really checked all the boxes, and I feel like when you really take a look at everything that factors in to choosing a college, I feel like Lehigh is just like the perfect place for so many different people, and I feel like it's the best place to be in the country.
And kind of talk about, this is such a unique time for prospective college students to be in right now with COVID-19. Obviously Lehigh's close to you. How difficult was it, just because you weren't really going on campus, you weren't really able to have a lot of face-to-face interaction? Did that make it your decision a little bit more difficult, or would you still say it was still a pretty easy decision for you?
It was pretty easy because I was able to Zoom them and FaceTime and build that relationship with all the coaches. But I did a lot of research because of all the time we had from COVID, and I think just doing all that research, it just made the decision so clear to me. And it doesn't even feel like an early decision for me, just because I feel like I knew I could have committed earlier and I still would have been comfortable with it. And I think we're going to be a really tough team to beat for years to come.
Ryan, you're close to home there with Lehigh. Was that a factor in it, or were you looking at it for just the academics and the wrestling and the fit and all those things? How did the geography play into it?
Yeah, so it does have its benefits because, I can take summer classes and get ahead academically, and then I never really have to stop training during the summer. So, I have that edge on those who are coming in from out of state. But, another great thing is it's in the Lehigh Valley. Competing in Grace Hall, it's so special. And I'm just glad to be a part of, Lehigh and everything that's offered.
And Ryan, talk a little bit about, you obviously had a lot of options. You were one of the first, or you were the first to win a Super 32 title as an eighth grader. Talk about just the amount of options you had. And I'm sure Lehigh was high on the list, but what other schools were you considering? And, what made Lehigh it for you?
Yeah, so I was considering Lehigh, Ohio State, Virginia Tech, Navy, and Wisconsin. That was probably my top five. And what separated for me was Lehigh really didn't have like a negative, so to speak, to it. I feel like it checked every single box, you know, and like I said, I did my research. Just like a quick, like simple fact is their student to faculty ratio is 9-1. So just having, that type of attention in the classroom, I think it's awesome. And that's just like from 5 minutes of research. I did tons of research, and Lehigh offers, so many opportunities in education and athletics, obviously. But yeah, so I feel like Lehigh kind of, had the edge from the beginning, and yeah, it's just the place for me.
Ryan, you brought up the academics. How big of a role did that play? I mean, just Lehigh is an elite academic institution, and do you know what you're going to major in, and how big of a role did all that play into it?
Yeah, so it played a big role. Again, getting a degree from Lehigh is huge, and for me, the way I thought about it is, where do I want to be in like 5 years? Thinking about my future. I feel like Lehigh sets you up perfectly, when you think about 5 years. So I think I want to major in some type of business, and then maybe like a minor in actuarial science, which is like the study of risk and all that. But yeah, they have a ton of, great majors with business and finance, and just like based off math. I'm a math guy, but yeah, Lehigh, it offers so much education-wise.
Eric, I was almost surprised to hear him not say engineer, right? Because there's so many.
Yeah, that's what you think of with Lehigh.
You think of the
Yeah,
engineers, right?
Yeah.
Ryan, just talk about where you're at in your career, right? You're one of the best in the nation. You have 2 state titles to your name. Where do you go from here? I can remember asking this to a lot of elite wrestlers like Sam Sasso or Spencer Lee. It's like, how do you stay motivated? How do you stay motivated considering you've accomplished so much at really such a young age? How do you stay motivated to stay hungry and to continue to improve as you go into your junior year?
Yeah, so I mean, the ultimate goal for me is being in a position to win a national title as a freshman in college. And, just kind of thinking about that every day, but also keeping in mind, I'm still in high school, and every day just improving and having fun with it. I think it's pretty simple. I have a lot to work on for sure. And, I feel like throughout this quarantine and whole COVID situation, I found like a new love for the sport, where I'm like, wow, I'm not too good in this position. So I'll work on it, and just seeing all that growth, it it's just awesome. I love it.
And talk a little bit about who's number one. You got that coming up here against Bazakis, and you guys have gone back and forth, Ironman. You guys have a nice little rivalry going, right? You guys it seems to kind of keep each other hungry and keep each other on their toes. How excited are you for that matchup? I know it was a matchup you had almost a year ago now, but how excited are you to get on the mat with him again?
I mean, I'm just excited in general to wrestle at all. I feel like this is a great opportunity, just to obviously wrestle him, but just to get on the mat in general. I'm just excited to see where, how much I've improved. And, obviously it's a pretty big event, but to me, I like to just simplify it, and, I'm just thinking of it as just another match, and I'm going to go out there and, have fun and score some points. So,
Ryan, what are your thoughts? I guess none of us really know where we're headed as far as the season goes. Are you confident that you're going to be able to get a season in and compete for a title and have your team looking for a title as well?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I'm not really sure what direction it's moving in. I kind of see from both angles, but I'm just kind of staying optimistic about it, I guess. I guess I can only focus on what I know there is, and that's who's number one. So I'm excited for that. And then whatever's next, I guess we'll find out. But, just focusing on improving every day, and, in the positions you're not as good at, just I can look forward to that every day at least.
Well, that's a really positive outlook. As far as, I know you still got a couple years left in high school, but looking ahead to college, what do you see, what kind of weight class you think you'll be in college?
Yeah, so I think I'll be a 41 pounder maybe my freshman year. You see it all the time, guys put on a lot of weight when they hit the college weight room. And I kind of see myself, gaining some weight after just being in the college room and, lifting. So I see myself as a 41, but that could probably change. I'm not really 100% sure.
And Ryan, talk about you. We saw you out in Fargo. Was that a couple years ago now? It seems like. How disappointed were you to not be able to get some freestyle action under your belt this summer? Because I know that's an area that you really, you want to make a world team and all that stuff. Like how disappointed were you just the fact that you weren't able to really have a freestyle season?
Yeah, it was disappointing for sure. I wanted to go to junior world team trials and test myself against, some of the best like college guys. Because I think it's huge, win or lose, you're going out there to either way, you're going to improve, so just going out there and competing, and so not being able to have a whole season where you could wrestle some tough college guys, it was upsetting. But I mean, everyone's suffering, so you kind of just got to put it in perspective. And I'm thankful I'm healthy, and yeah.
Well, Ryan, we appreciate your time, and congratulations to you on your commitment to Lehigh. I think, a lot of people like to see a Pennsylvania guy staying in Pennsylvania, so that's pretty cool to see. I know your parents are probably pretty excited. They don't have to travel across the country to see you, right? Wisconsin, right? Grace Hall is a little closer, is it not?
It is pretty close. I can actually probably walk. It's like 7 miles from my house.
Wow.
Yeah.
Don't do that before a match in college. You don't want to tire yourself out there.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, again, congratulations. We hope that we get to see you for the season, but if not, we're definitely going to see you at Who's Number One against Nick Bazakis. So we're excited for that match at least. But we really hope you're able to go out there and defend your 2 titles and potentially become a 4-time Pennsylvania state champion. So again, Ryan, congratulations. We appreciate your time tonight. Okay.
Thank you. And go Hawks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Appreciate it. All right. See ya.
So Eric, I would agree with a lot of what some of the quote experts say is that Ryan is one of the biggest names to commit to Lehigh. Were you surprised a little bit when you saw Lehigh for you personally?
I mean, I could see a guy like that staying at home. You don't think of. Lehigh has obviously been a really, really good program. They haven't been that elite program like a Penn State and Ohio State and Iowa, Oklahoma State over the years. But, they have the potential to really claim elite guys like that, and to get somebody like Ryan to stay home there in the Valley. I mean, they, like he said, they have so much to offer when you look in terms of the academics, a super cool campus. I've always loved their campus there, what it's like, to get to see that. Great coaching staff. So yeah, tons of things going for Lehigh there. And so, it is an attractive place, especially if staying home is important to you. So yeah, I was a little surprised, but hey, it's hard to fault his logic. And as he said, somebody who's going to study actuary science, he's done his research, he's done his homework, he's figuring out what's the best fit for him, and it sounds like Lehigh is definitely what it was for him.
And I would agree with you, Eric. And Ryan's, I mean, he's a bright kid, right? He's a smart kid, and we noticed that even after interviewing him as an 8th grader, as a Super 32, where he's pretty mature for his age. And I think at first I wouldn't say I was surprised, just because you think of the big names and you think of like an Ohio State, a Big Ten school, right? Just because every single college, perennial power in college wrestling was calling him and trying to get him to get in their room. So he had looks from a lot of different areas. So but the more I thought about it, I was like, this is a perfect fit for him. I think he has that Lehigh style. I don't know if that's a real thing or not. I'll have to ask Mason about that, but I just think he's he's a hard worker. He's constantly looking for the best competition. He's a guy who wrestled in the Super 32 and won it as an 8th grader. This kid's always looking for a challenge. And, like you said with Lehigh's, maybe they're not Penn State, maybe they're not Iowa, but you better believe they've got some high quality guys and high, caliber guys. Look at all the names that we saw throughout here. It kind of reminds me of like a Mitch Minotti. He was a 2-time All-American there. Not as big as a pedigree as Ryan was, but somebody who's just going to get, just really grind his way to a potential national title. I really do believe that Ryan Crookham is going to be in the hunt for a national title at Lehigh.
Yeah, and you talked about the work ethic. I think that was evident even as we talked to him about trying to get him on the show, because some guys are like, oh yeah, whenever you need me, I'll be available, whatever. And Ryan's like, well, I got to check my training schedule, see if I can fit it in. And that's in a way that's kind of refreshing. That as much as we love having him on the show, he was like, hey, look, I gotta do my training first, and if I can work around it and fit it in, then yeah, I'd be happy to come on.
It's definitely reassuring to hear that, because like you said, a lot of times when we say, hey, we want to interview, and a lot of times it's right away. But he's a very disciplined individual, right? And I think that's evident. And I think that has a lot to do with, his coach, Matt Fears at Notre Dame Green Pond. I think just that whole mentality there, working hard, being in the Lehigh Valley, kind of scrapping your way up through Notre Dame, Green Pond. He's been around different programs, Saucon Valley, and you really see the Lehigh Valley just come to life when you have these guys all wrestling against each other and kind of making each other better. So I think he's a guy who's just really I think he's gonna do well in Grace Hall. I really do. I think he's gonna have. I think the expert for right, this is a huge pickup for Lehigh.
Yeah, I agree with you. Great. And to get him this early, that kind of allows them to solidify things. Obviously nothing's official yet, but to have him, there and know, okay, we've got a really big guy to build these recruiting classes around. And, when you get a commitment like that, that can help keep other guys, especially in the Lehigh Valley, at home whenever they see that, hey, Ryan Crookham, one of the biggest recruits in the country, thinks this is a great place to be for the next 4 or 5 years. Maybe this is the place for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, just getting a name like that really does help bring in those and attract those other name recruits. Thinking of like a Spencer Lee to Iowa, and how many kids are like, wow, even look at the PA pipeline there. You look at Lehigh and you say, hey, I can stay home. I can stay close to home. Those elite guys, those elite level guys, where you're competing against schools like Ohio State, Penn State, even Rutgers, right? Because Rutgers isn't far away. So you have a kid from Nazareth, from Saucon, or from Notre Dame Green Pond, where they feel comfortable staying home at Lehigh and competing there in Grace Hall. So you're right. It could start definitely a snowball effect of some of the top District 11 guys. And you look at Ryan in his career. I mean, he's 99-3 in his career. I mean, he's very good. He's obviously a guy that we've seen on the national level really excel, but just dominating people. He never stops. He never stops scoring. He never stops attacking. He never stops wrestling. So I think, a guy like him, I kind of feel for during COVID-19 because he's just like chomping at the bit. Man. I'm glad he's got a match at Who's Number One with Bazakis because, man, I could watch those. I don't know if you remember that finals from last year at the Ironman. I mean, those two just put on a show, and a lot of mutual respect between those two, which is awesome to see. But I can't wait to see those two scrap and go at it because not only are we just missing wrestling, but we're missing seeing our top level guys banging heads with guys like Bazakis.
And you brought up a good point there that he has something in his sights now that he can look at and say, hey, this is what I'm training for, because I'm sure he's training all, as much as he could throughout the whole COVID situation. But, it's easier to kind of hone in and look and say, okay, this is my target date. This is where I have to be. And, to keep that going, because I'm sure it's very difficult to keep that training schedule up at that peak where you want it to be when you're like, well, I may wrestle again in 6 months or, at some point, when you have that date locked in that you know where you're going to be, I think that really helps.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be probably one of the hardest things about this. It's not maybe the lack of access to partners or wrestling. I think it's that mental edge, that mental kind of, eye on the prize, light at the end of the tunnel, because you're playing Russian roulette. You're like, you may have a season, you may not. You may have a postseason, you may not. You may just lose your entire season if you're a junior, going into your senior year. I had a lot of non-wrestling fans talk to me about this. They're like, hey, what happens to a kid who maybe doesn't peak until his junior year? I don't know. You better hope there's a lot of off-season stuff that they can go to because really, these colleges are having a hard time getting looks on some of these bigger name guys and even the under radar kind of guys. So, but you're right. I mean, how many coaches have the wrestlers write down their goals in the beginning of the year, all year, right? So you can visualize success. I remember Nico Megaludis, his senior year, wrote on his steering wheel, NCAA champion. I forget what year it was. He wrote the year in NCAA champion on his steering wheel. So every time he got into the car, he saw and reminded him, like, this is what I'm working for. This is what I'm working towards. If you don't have that, if you're like, oh, hell, I don't know if I'm going to have an NCAA season or not, how do you stay motivated? I mean, I was never one for the mental edge and aspect of it, but man, I can't imagine not having that goal in mind.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult. I mean, even for those elite guys, who want to get better and that's their goal is to just keep getting better every day and improving. That's a great mindset, but it seems like that would be awfully hard to maintain with no actual competition dates on the horizon. That, you really need that chance to prove that you've gotten better aside from just working out in the room every day.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, how much is that really, a benchmark for where you're at? A lot of these guys just compete all year round. Fargo, Super 32, Disney duels, whatever it is, they're always competing. They're always saying, all right, my gas tank's hurting a little bit. Maybe I need to start running a little bit more. I need to work on my, bottom. I'm not getting out as quick as I'd like to. So it's like struggle to even stay. I feel really bad for kids in high school right now. It's, I feel bad for a lot of people in the world right now, but I especially feel bad for, high school age kids that really don't have much to look forward to. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, how many of us really went to school because we just loved academics? I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, but man, sports are just what gets a lot of people through the doors. Unfortunately, that's sometimes the way it is.
I've been thinking about it a lot, Jeff. Somebody brought it up to me, where will we be if we don't have a season? And I think that wrestling is the one sport where I think, for a lack of a better term, I think you'll see a lot of tournaments and competitions going rogue, where it's like, okay, we don't have a PIAA season, but we can throw together an open tournament and the PIAA can't do anything about it. If they end up canceling a season, how are they going to stop, Joe from down the street from saying, hey, we're going to have a tournament here and we'll follow the restrictions that we need to follow and make it as safe as possible. But I think that wrestling, being an individual sport to a certain extent, can really get away from that a lot more than a sport like football can. If the PIAA says there's no football, it's going to be awfully hard to throw together a travel team in a couple weeks. Whereas wrestling, I think, kids will find a way to get competitions in.
Yeah, and I think that's the advantage that we have as wrestling is that we don't necessarily need a 5-on-5, 3-on-3. We can just simply have a some type of event where, and I think you're right. I think you're going to see a lot of events pop up. I know we're on the brink of making an announcement about a particular event that we're going to be possibly putting on. I don't want to give away too much just yet, but there's going to be a lot of guys that are just looking for any type of competition that they can get. And yeah, you're right. What does it look like if we don't have football? You're not going to you may have a couple flag football pickup games in the neighborhood, but I doubt you're going to have like an organized travel football league where you're saying, okay, Governor Wolf, we got you. We're going to operate here and do this. I don't see it happening. Even like with basketball, I can't really. I guess
I think basketball could happen because they have AAU and things like that. Those connections are already made. Now, the big problem with this, of course, is the elite guys are going to find that competition. Whether it's basketball or whatever, wrestling, they're going to find ways to compete and face off against some of the other really top guys and girls out there. But the problem that you're going to see is you're not going to have those middle tier guys and girls, or even the newcomers that just want to try wrestling for the first time. They're probably not going to sign up and travel an hour and a half away or wherever to get into a tournament. That's where we go back to and I don't want to get into the whole dual meet situation again, but that's where I think you're going to be hurting if we have a situation where we don't have a season, is those people that are new to our sport or still relatively inexperienced aren't going to get into it. We're going to have those, the Ryan Crookhams are going to find matches. They'll find a way they've been doing this their whole life, and they'll find a way to wrestle, whether it's here or in Iowa or South Dakota or wherever. They're going to find competitions. It's those kids that are fairly new to the sport and just picking it up that aren't going to get those opportunities.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about, just having newer wrestlers or new advocates for the sport, and we're probably not going to have a whole lot of new wrestlers coming into wrestling this year. I think we're probably going to see a lot of wrestlers that just aren't competing, and you also talk about the higher level wrestlers, but you also have to have money, time. You have to have resources to do all these things. I mean, there was those duels that Dyson went to down in South Carolina. For a lot of kids, that's not a feasible thing that you're going to be able to do, whether it's expenses, whether it's time, family situation. So unfortunately, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer type analogy. I think there's always ways to think outside the box, and the guys that really want to compete and continue to succeed, they're going to do it. They're going to work, but they're going to have to work really hard because not everyone's going to get an invite to who's number one, right? That's not possible.
Yeah, but I think it's always been that way, or at least, for the past 20, 30 years, it's been that way because, to go to Fargo, you have to find a way to make that happen financially, whether that's, funds on your own or whether your parents can just foot the bill or however it is. I mean, unfortunately, financial status does play a part in most sports. Wrestling, not as much as some others. Like I've gotten into hockey a little bit with the players living with me, and if you don't have a pretty good income, it's tough to be in hockey just because of the costs associated with it. Wrestling, thankfully, you can get a pair of beat up old shoes and a headgear and go out there and wrestle, to a certain extent. But I do get what you're saying. The one thing that I will say, going back for a minute to the inexperience, is the one way that this, I'm not saying that anybody's winning out of the whole COVID situation, but the one place where wrestling could possibly benefit is if there isn't a fall sports season and you get a lot of kids that are hungry just to go and do something, come January, if that's when the wrestling and basketball seasons start. Maybe those rosters would see some kids that aren't worn down from football or cross country or whatever, and like, hey, I just want to get out and do something, so let me give this sport a try. So you may see some numbers there. Now, of course, the problem is, how do you condense, if you do move fall sports back into spring, how do you condense football, wrestling, track, baseball? How do you get all those things into a school year?
Yeah, and I think that's the real question there is we talk about the Big Ten canceling their season. It's like, okay, well, is a spring sport possible for football, and most people would say no, it's not possible. So I get what you're saying, going back to what picking up a wrestling shoe and a beat up old wrestling shoe and just kind of wrestling, and yeah, it's different. But someone like Dyson, Dyson was supposed to play football this year, and he's like, well, I guess that's not happening. And I would assume that, like, hockey players, like you said, the equipment itself is pretty expensive, I would assume. So
well, we had one kid that was living with us and got cut from the Johnstown team, and he went out to Oregon to play, and in the junior league that he was in out there, it cost $10,000 a year just to be in the league. That was just to pay for ice time, travel, all that stuff. And then he had to pay, I think it was $350 a month to the family that he lived with out there for food, and then you throw on getting your car out there, and obviously all the other expenses associated with it as far as paying for gas and all that stuff. I mean, it's easily $15,000-$20,000 a year these hockey players are playing at times to play the sport that they love. So we're fortunate in that regard that wrestling, yeah, if you want to go to all these competitions out of state, you're going to have to pay more. But, for the most part, you're able to find competition within an hour or two of most places in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And did you see the Super 32? They said that they're still planning on having it, as of right now.
I did not see that.
I put out something. I saw something that they put out that said, hey, we're still planning on having it if the governor goes into phase whatever it is. And, I'm just thinking, like, I can't see that happening. I really can't. But while we're on that subject, we talked about the mental aspect of wrestling and kind of staying focused. I think now is a great time to go over to the Tactical Mind and Nick Fuller to hear about what athletes can do to help hone in their mental skills. We'll be right back.
This is the Tactical Mind, and I work with athletes in the field of sports psychology as a cognitive performance coach. Within 5 minutes of talking to a parent, they make the connection right away that this would be great for my kid to have when they're in college, when they're just going through the ups and downs of high school. Who wouldn't benefit from having more self-awareness? Who wouldn't benefit from having the ability to self-regulate our emotions and our counterproductive thoughts? Who wouldn't benefit from having more optimism, not just on the field, but in life?
Eric, I did notice on the break that you're wearing West Virginia colors. Was that planned for this because you're such a big Mountaineers fan, or was
not in any way, shape, or form? No, this was Pitt has changed their color scheme about a dozen times in my lifetimes, and at one point these were Pitt colors, so that's what my defense.
I was almost half expecting a flying V, like right up here in the chest for you or something.
Never. That is sacrilege, Jeff. Never.
Let's go Mountaineers chant, something like that going.
The only thing I have Mountaineers in my background is that was my high school mascot.
Yeah, the Berlin Mountaineers. You're right.
Yeah. No West Virginia.
That's a shame. You're missing out, Eric. So let's talk about college a little bit. Big Ten today announced that they are, I believe they said postpone. They used the word postpone, not cancel fall sports. It's not the sport that we are invested in and talking about, but it has a correlation to wrestling collegiately and also in the high school realm. how much of an impact do you think this has? And I think you mentioned, I didn't see it, but the Pac-12, did they make an announcement, or they're going to make an announcement that they are
Yes, yeah. It sounds like the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are both saying that there will be no fall sports. And so, yeah, that's absolutely huge, because I mean, we know as well as anyone that football is the driver for everything in college sports. Most programs are non-revenue programs, if you will, as far as wrestling and, whether it's tennis or soccer or whatever else, they're not bringing in the big bucks. Football is footing the bills for most of the other sports on campus at most, especially the Power 5 conferences. So, to lose that potentially is going to be a huge hit. My fear is, even if we get past COVID and wrestling is able to start on January 1st, I wonder how many programs are really going to be under the gun because they just don't have the financial support and the backing of the university because of a lack of a football season. Hopefully the Big Ten schools, I mean, those are all pretty well funded, and wrestling is such a big part of the Big Ten that hopefully nobody in there is at risk. But, some of these smaller schools or smaller conferences, I really worry about how they're going to have the financial backing to support a wrestling team.
Yeah, I mean, you're right when we talk about just the funding at the college level and football not, being competed and you're not having that revenue stream coming in. If I'm the Big Ten, wrestling, I'm concerned. I'm 100% concerned because it doesn't matter how successful wrestling is in the Big Ten, football is king, right? So I mean, you lose that. How the domino effect just kind of continues to take hold. So. And the COVID can't read a calendar. I mean, I just love the January 1st thing and new year, new me.
It's just 2020, Jeff. As soon as we get 2020 behind us, we'll be all good.
We're good. Okay, that's nice to know. I'm happy to hear that that I can plan accordingly for 2021. But it's like. We keep, and it's like I correlate this to my wife's work. It's like, all right, we're going to bring you back into the office in May. It's like, we're going to bring you back in August. Actually, we're not going to bring you back to the end of the year, December. And you're thinking,
see, this all goes back to the mindset though, Jeff. We got to have that goal out in front of us that, okay, because if they say, we're not playing any sports until we figure this out, everybody's going to go completely nuts. We at least have to have a goal in mind that, okay, maybe there won't be football in the fall, but maybe there will be after January 1st. Maybe we can still find a way to play it in the spring.
Yeah, I mean, so that leads us right into what I wanted to talk about next was the PIAA and Governor Wolf, right? Because we haven't talked since Governor Wolf made that mic drop announcement, which, by the way, was pretty bush league. I mean, come on, like, at literally the end of the press conference, and you're just gonna
and it was just bizarre
drop a
because
bomb?
It didn't seem like anyone at the PIAA knew about it.
Right. It definitely caught a ton of people off guard. And I think especially Dr. Lombardi and the board of directors at the PIAA is saying, like, hold on, like, where is this coming from? They came out with, and I've definitely have gained a little bit more respect for the PIAA in seeing how they've kind of responded to and planned for opening up sports, because they put together a pretty substantial and in-depth COVID-19 mitigation plan for sports, fall sports specifically. So they had this plan in mind, and all of a sudden Governor Wolf comes in and is like, drops a bomb, and they're scrambling like, what do we do? And I wasn't surprised that they said, we're going to press pause on this, and in 2 weeks we're going to evaluate, and hopefully we can kind of make have a conversation with Governor Wolf and their staff and his staff, and just kind of say, like, what are you doing here, right? Because that was a bomb.
I'll be really interested to see what happens, because I know that since then I think that it's come out that the Wolf administration has kind of said, yeah, this is a recommendation, but we could make it something that we'll enforce too if the PIAA doesn't say there's not going to be any sports. So it'll be really interesting. Does the PIAA have the the balls to say, okay, yeah, we're going against the governor's recommendation, and we're gonna roll out the footballs and the soccer balls and the volleyballs and go ahead and play, or do they say no, we're gonna cancel it? And if they do say we're gonna play, does he then step in and say, no, you're not? It's going to be, there could be a real showdown there as to who's going to win that battle.
Yeah, I think this is a game of chicken here, because I think you got, I think just in, and I've been following this very, very closely, and just hearing Dr. Lombardi, his statements and some of the board of director statements, even some state legislators say, I think they are pretty adamant that they want sports in high school. I think they're pretty adamant that they're not going to necessarily bend to the powers that be, if you will. So I think we're in for a potential fight here. I think just the tone that you're seeing from across the state. In fact, I don't know if you saw the WPIAL press conference yesterday, where the WPIAL called Governor Wolf's kind of recommendation uncalculated, inconsistent, and unfair. And that's coming from the biggest region in the state of Pennsylvania, and really one of the bigger driving forces in the state in terms of high school sports. So that to me shows what type of mentality these leagues and administrators and I just saw Hempfield Area High School. They said they're like, we're playing sports, we're having kids in school, and we're playing sports. Come shut me down. But
not too far down the road from there, didn't Uniontown say they're not playing sports?
Right, Uniontown this is before the recommendations too.
Right, I think to a certain extent it makes sense for individual districts to do what's best for them. Because we talked about it before. A rural school district, and we said Elk County is going to be a lot different than something in Philadelphia. The situations and the pressures and the risks that they're facing. If we had Ryan on here still, he could break down the risk assessment for us, for how it's different in Philadelphia than it is in Elk County, because obviously they're facing completely different situations.
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about this before about the population size, and like, are you going to hold tournaments in Elk County or Jefferson County or some other county where the numbers are lower, or an area like Philadelphia? You're in a hot spot. You're in an area where the numbers, and talking to Joe Youngblood a lot about this, he's saying like it's different out here than it is where you're at, Dyson. You're in Punxsutawney, and I think to sum up those thoughts, I think we're in for a little bit of fight. I think in 2 weeks, I would be surprised to see the PIAA come back and say, "You're right, Governor Wolf. What were we thinking? We're just gonna pack this up here. We're gonna postpone potentially," or that's one option. Two, I think they come out with an adaptive plan like some other states have, like a Colorado or Oregon, right, or some states out west where they've said, okay, we're gonna do sports, but because the COVID can't read a calendar, January 1st we're good. We're gonna start our fall sports. But most, like golf, like I feel bad for golfers. Like golf, like
right,
you could.
My brother's a golf coach, and that's what he's saying.
He's a golf coach, yeah.
He's out there playing every day, and he's like, this is ridiculous that we can't have a competition because all these golf courses are open. All the old guys who are more at risk are out there playing, but his high school girls team can't play.
Yeah, that's just dumb. That's just. That's just I don't like that.
What it comes down to is it's nobody wants to say, okay, this team can do it, but this team can't.
Right.
Because then everybody's going to be up in arms. So it's easier to make a blanket statement and say,
sure it is.
No
I get
high
it.
School sport.
I get why they say it. It's like, because you can't say, well, golfers, because your sport is naturally socially distanced, you're allowed to have. I mean, well, that's not fair. What about football? Listen, forget fans in the stand. Okay, that horse has left the stable. It's gone. Forget it. Let it go. Let's at least get these kids to play. It's not about you. It's not about the parents. Like little Johnny's going to be just fine playing a game without you, yelling in the stands that he can't even hear you. You know, like
but
it's okay.
As the meme that I see everywhere says, how are the coaches going to know when they're wrong with no parents in the stands?
Or the refs too. Like I mean, or the coaches.
No one is going to know that that's two in a match.
You blew that call, you idiot.
The Iowa fans aren't all there yelling two.
Installing. You know, how the ref's going to know installing is without.
Exactly.
You're kind of rude, Eric.
Okay, let me ask you this, Jeff. I want to back up a minute. You said that you think that the PIAA will come out and say that they still want to go ahead with it. Does college football change that? You know, we've already seen the Big Ten and the Pac-12. Now, right now, the last I've seen, the ACC and SEC are saying we want to play, and the Big 12 is kind of on the fence. But if all those dominoes fall, if the ACC, the SEC, the Big 12 all say, you know what, yeah, we want to play, but it's just not worth the risk. Isn't that very hard for high schools to say then? Yeah. You know, we think we can still do it, even though these programs that are making hundreds of millions of dollars can't figure out a way to make it happen.
I mean, I think it does and it doesn't. So I think, like you said, with the Big Ten kind of folding up and Pac-12 folding up, you do see other divisions and leagues that's saying like we're gonna play. Like we're even I think was it Nebraska's head coach today said something like we're exploring all options.
Like, maybe we'll find somewhere else to play.
League, right? I mean, the Big 12. Hey, Big 12, come on over. You know, you want to come make West Virginia's schedule even harder? Come on over. That's fine, as long as we can see the Mountaineers play. I think if you see, so it's definitely a gut punch. I don't think it's a TKO. I don't think it's a knockout just yet. But what I think it is like you got hit pretty hard and you're kind of winded a little bit. But I still think, the Big Ten and Pac-12, yes, that hurts high school sports, but I don't think it knocks them out completely. I think it changes the strategy. And a lot of people, colleges are so much different than high school in the sense of what they have available to them and liability and potential, lawsuits. And there's a little bit more at stake in a college setting than it is, I think, in a high school setting. I also think that, you look at high schools and, virtually having high school is not always an option because of just the vast quantity of people, lack of equipment, lack of trained professionals to handle that. Whereas college, they've been doing a lot of, even, Eric, I don't know if they were around in your college, but at least when I was in college, which, was actually kind of long ago, we were doing online training. We were doing online classes, Blackboard. We were doing different things. Whereas in high school, I mean, we wouldn't even have any laptops or, anything like that. So I think they are different. If kids are in school, physically in school, I think you have a very strong argument to say we can have sports. And I think it's that risk, and it's like, how much are you willing to – colleges aren't going to fold up because they lost their sports. They may take a hit or hurt, but – I don't know. I think high schools are a little bit different.
The big thing for me, the big difference between the two is the travel. Because if you look at the Big Ten, just off the top of my head, I think you're looking at 9-10 states, something like that you're going to have involved. So there's going to be a lot of travel. Even if you say we're only playing within our conference, we're not going outside it, you've still got, from New Jersey all the way across to Iowa and Minnesota. And, so you've got a lot of travel involved. It wouldn't shock me if the PIAA says, okay, we're not going to have a state champ this year. We may not have a PIAA football state championship, but you know what? We're going to let every district play, because they can stay within their geographic boundary and not have to risk going into someplace that's a hot spot. But they can stay within their confines and at least let these kids play. I mean, would it suck? Yeah, everybody wants to see the state championship games. But you know what? They did it for decades without a football playoff championship. So, if you really want the kids to be able to play and just enjoy all that sports has to offer, they can still do that without crowning a state champion. And that might be the compromise that the PIAA finds a way to say, hey, we can decide what's best for them and go that route.
Yeah. And you use the word compromise. And I think that's a word that, is something that we have to be very cognizant about. Is we are going to be compromising on a lot of different things. And like I said, fans, that horse has left the stable. You're done. Let's at least compromise and say, okay, maybe you don't have an overall state championship, or maybe you only have a regional champion, and leave it at that. That's still better than nothing. It's like, I mean, I don't know. I think the high school is a little bit different because you're going to have people, it's more of a grassroots movement, I guess you could say. You have a lot of like parents, you have, PTAs, you have boosters, you have, crazy parents and things like that. Whereas a university, you're almost like semi-pro. I mean, there's, I don't know. And what we're finding is, at least from what I find, is that the bubble analogy works, right? The bubble method works.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, if you say, okay, we're going to contain you into one district or one section or whatever, you can play within those teams. That's better than you traveling to Allentown from Pittsburgh or Philly to Altoona. I think that changes things, and I think there's a way to work around it. And I think it's a lot of it. I hate this word, fluid. It's such a fluid situation, but it really is a fluid situation in the sense that it may look vastly different come November, December, but we at least, I would at least think we got to give it a shot, right? We at least got to let the golfers golf, for God's sakes.
Exactly.
Let the golfers golf.
Yeah.
I mean,
as the hashtag says, let them play.
Let them play. Yeah, that thing's trending for sure. I mean, and I know Dyson loves Iowa, and Iowa was able to do their baseball season, right? Did you see that? And I think
again, Iowa's different than Pennsylvania, though. The situation in Iowa, where it's almost all rural, is different than a Philadelphia. And to be fair, as we talked about, Pennsylvania, a lot of Pennsylvania is like Iowa, in that rural area. But we have the two big cities that really kind of skew things in the view of Pennsylvania. So I do think that it's different. And that's why, in a lot of ways, it is better if we have this, each area makes their own decisions on this instead of one blanket ruling that covers everyone.
Yeah, I mean, with college football, I think you're seeing that with the different, divisions or leagues or conferences saying, okay, we're going to do this, we're not going to do that. And I think you could do the similar things in the state of Pennsylvania, but I really do believe that the PIAA, I think they're going to roll up their sleeves and try to figure something out. I really do. And I'm happy to hear that, but I also, I hope that it's done in a way that it's, Governor Wolf doesn't come back and say, you want to test me? Okay, you're shut down completely. And then you hurt AAUs, you hurt all kinds of different, sportings, youth leagues. I mean, how many youth leagues have continued playing or continue holding their events? And it's going to happen regardless. I don't know. I see your analogy about the two major cities in Pennsylvania having, causing a little bit of an issue with Iowa, but population wise and there's rural areas in Iowa, but there's a lot of rural areas in Pennsylvania too. And I think it's how much work do you want to put in to make it work and make it happen. It's too complex. You talk about Ryan Crookham and this, this risk assessment with the Big Ten, like you said, traveling, there's a lot of risk in there. We have at work, we have like all these risk levels, and it's like, okay, if you went to a bar, you're high risk. If you were on a plane, you're high risk. If you're in a car by yourself, all right, you're down here. The same thing can be said about sports. It's like, that's why I think the bubble analogy, the bubble method is I'm going to say bubble a few more times, but I think, I really think that has shown that it works. And I will, because we're coming up on I think we're on a 7-minute warning here for Power Hour, so finish your drinks, Eric. Brad Wilson from Lehigh Express Times, he wrote I don't know if you read his article, Eric. It was like,
I didn't get a chance to. I saw him tweet it, and I wanted to, but
Brad has a way with words, man, and I love reading Brad, and I love listening to Brad, because he just when he speaks, you're like, that makes sense. I think what he said was right about we got to look at it kind of with middle of the road. It's not as bad as it really is, and but are we going to survive without sports? Yes. But do sports matter to a lot of people? Yes. Do we know what's going to happen with COVID? No, we really don't. I don't know. It was just an enlightening kind of breath of fresh air to read something like that, because you can read a whole hell of a lot of literature out there on high school sports, and everyone's ranting, including us. But I don't know. What do you think, Eric?
Obviously it's a really tough thing to make a call on, because we don't know, as you said, there's no calendar for COVID. We don't know, if it's going to be better on January 1st. We hope it is, but right now we just don't know until we get to a point. And even when we get a vaccine, I know there are a lot of people that are saying, oh, well, I'm not going to I'm not going to use a vaccine. I don't trust what the government's doing here. And, it's all a hoax and all this stuff. So there are just so many conflicting things out there that it's really hard to know where we are and what the correct path is that we take as far as society, as far as sports. None of us in our lifetimes have really experienced anything like this. It's really hard to know what's the right thing to do in this situation.
You don't remember the Spanish flu, Eric? I thought you
not
were like
so
a toddler.
much.
I thought you
no,
were a toddler
I'm
back
old,
then.
but not quite that
You're
old.
old, not that old. I thought you had some experience with the Spanish flu. I love it, Eric, that you're wearing a WVU shirt. I had to give it to you. You're right that, but I think like the question that Rob Walco said to us is like, at what point, at when is it going to be safe to play sports? When there's zero COVID deaths, when there's zero, or when there's a vaccine? Is the vaccine just going to magically, this is going to be around for a while. We're going to have to deal with this situation for a while. So instead of throwing in the towel on everything, like, let's start adapting and start. Other countries have done it. I'm not going to get into. We're down to our 4-minute warning, Eric. So let's not go into a great thing here, but other people have figured it out.
The one thing I do want to point out, and I'm cursed with being able to see both sides of most issues. When I look at it and I think that's all well and good until you're the coach who has the kid who something happens to. And then, that would just be devastating if you're like, man, a 16-year-old lost his life because we wanted to play football.
Yeah.
That would be heartbreaking.
But that's, again, like,
and I know
not to be morbid, but
because there's the risk that the same kid is going there and is in a car accident and loses his life going to football practice. I get that, but it wouldn't make it any easier for that coach, and it wouldn't be any easier to swallow that and say, man, I think we did the right thing anyway.
Yeah, and I think that is the golden, the question that everyone has on their mind. The great question is, at what point in time or when is it safe to do certain things? And it's just, and everyone has different opinions, and no one's going to agree. And I tend to be in your camp, Eric, where it's like I could see both sides of a lot of different arguments and stories and things and people's opinions, but what is a safe number to say, okay, we're comfortable with this, we're going to run sports, we're going to have football and basketball, and is it worth it? Well, is it worth it to go to school? What's the risk of me going to the grocery store? What's my risk of going to Kennywood? It's like, okay, it
sounds like there are going to be a whole lot more people out there studying risk assessment.
It would make sense. Yeah. That's cool. I think Ryan Crookham's going to lead that charge too. I appreciate that. Appreciate him coming on to talk about his commitment to Lehigh. That's a great pickup for Lehigh, a guy who is staying in the Lehigh Valley area. I think he's got a great frame, so I think 141 is not a stretch for him. You heard him talk about 141. I think that's a definitely good position for him to be in. He's got broad shoulders. He's filled out nice. I think 141 is a good fit for him. I think Lehigh's again a great fit for him, and I think this is going to be again, you're going to see other high quality wrestlers in the area maybe follow that lead into Lehigh and Grace Hall.
Yeah, absolutely. Who wouldn't want to be a teammate with Ryan Crookham? The guy's a stud, and as we talked about, that has the potential to go in there and possibly compete for a national title right away, even as we're looking a couple years down the road.
Well, hopefully by then, COVID reads the calendar. And is like, I gotta stop. It's 2021. Ryan Crookham's got to go out and win a national championship, or 2022.
State title first, yeah.
Oh, let's go with the state title first, yeah. It's crazy to think all these asterisks that are going to be out there. We're down to a minute left in Power Hour. And I forgot to mention, I had another commitment I wanted to talk about. Sam McGonigal from Westchester Henderson out of District 1. He just recently committed to Brown. He's going to be a rising senior. He'll be a senior this year at Westchester Henderson. He was a 3-time state qualifier, and he placed 7th in the state last year. I saw him at Escape the Rock last year. Was very impressed with him. I thought he's really came on strong. Maybe he probably didn't finish as strong as he wanted to, but he did get on the medal stand for the first time. He's headed into Brown, so congratulations to him. Eric, we got more to digest and chew on here until next week, Eric.
Big weekend. PA Power kickball team in action this weekend, playing in the Team Tyler tournament. Got had a last minute cancellation and was able to get state champion Caden Cassidy onto the team. So he's a ringer, man. We saw him in the PA Power tournament, and the kid can play kickball.
Yeah, but you got to be careful. He talks a lot of smack.
Yeah, well, our whole team talks a lot of smack.
Yeah, but Caden at the PA Power kickball tournament, he was just jabbing at everyone. I mean, he was just like chirping. He's
going to be spooning it up there after a victory, and somebody's just going to peg him with a kickball to the head.
For sure, that's happening. But he's a hell of a kickballer. He played very well. So
he nearly took that. He and the Bedford team nearly took down PA Power.
I remember that.
We were able to prevent.
I remember that. Yeah. No thanks to me, Eric. Best of luck this weekend, okay? Be safe. Wear your mask, okay? I need you here for the Power Hour, okay? Because
got it.
Can't have Joe Youngblood on the show.
I got a pit mask that I should have brought on for the show. I can
get you a
that.
WVU mask. I can get you a PA Power mask. Either way.
You can't breathe through a WVU mask.
Yeah. All you smell is pure greatness,
Coal dust.
No. Eric, thank you. Ryan Crookham, thank you for coming on. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for all your updates on PA Wrestling, PAPowerWrestling.com. Follow us on Twitter at PAPowerWrestle, and, of course, on Facebook. And give us a follow on Instagram as well. Eric, until next time, we'll see you.